Good morning, everybody. Good morning. This is a great turnout. Thank you all for coming. My name is Vince Feeling, and I'm one of the new TA specialists here at CCO. Came on about June, so this is my first real training, so I'm actually really excited about this. This is, once again, a really, really good turnout. And looks like we're going to have a standing room only. This is great. This is awesome. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, a few housekeeping things. There's multiple sign-in sheets floating around. Please make sure that you sign in and make sure that you put your organization's name so you can get your TA credit hours for this particular training. We're going to go ahead and get started. Board governance. Board governance. Now, this is something that's going to be a refresher for probably a lot of people in here, but it's something that's very, very important. So whenever we talk about board governance, what comes to your mind whenever I say board governance or governance? What comes to your mind whenever we're dealing with your all's boards?
A lot of work.
A lot of work. Yes, it is a lot of work. It's very hard work. And you have to be very, very committed to what you're doing. Yes, ma'am?
The need to communicate.
Absolutely. The need to communicate. That's probably the best one right there. The need to communicate. Because without communication, sometimes there could be conflict. Without communication, sometimes your organization's mission kind of falters a little bit. You're not as strong as what you want to do in your communities. So communication is definitely the key. What are some other things that come to your mind whenever we talk about board governance? Back here in the nosebleed section over here. Board governance. What do we think about when you think about board governance? What are some things that come to your mind?
Responsibility.
Absolutely. Have to be responsible. Yes, we will touch on all of these. So whenever I talk about board governance for this particular presentation, it's pretty much how an organization polices itself. That's pretty much what it is. Board governance is how an organization polices itself. And we'll get to the handouts here shortly. Right now, it's just me talking and us kind of just browsing through some PowerPoints. For one thing, the organization itself has to set policy. It has to set rules. It has to set something that the organization will go by. If you don't have this, the organization is just going to be everywhere. And whenever your organization is just everywhere, you can't really focus on the mission that your organization was founded for. Your organization has to be transparent. People have to know what's going on in your organization. Whenever you're talking about nonprofit boards, that's a matter of public record. Pretty much everything that a nonprofit board does is a matter of public record. Minutes, treasurer's reports, stuff like that, everything has to be transparent. And whenever you're talking about transparency, whenever an organization is transparent, it begins to build trust in your all's communities. And if your organization does not have trust from your communities, your organization is pretty much fighting an uphill battle. Another thing, you have to include everybody. The board has to include everybody. You cannot exclude anybody. Efficiency is the key. And communication will also help with efficiency as well. Have to be efficient. Don't waste your time. If you have a goal, if you have a mission, try to hone in on what your organization was founded for and be efficient. Use your time wisely because that's something that you will never get back. And you got to make sure that your organization follows the law. Now, we're not going to get into that much of the legal aspect, this particular one, but we will touch on some of the things that the Open Records, Open Meetings Act of Oklahoma talks about. And that's actually going to be in another training, I believe in March. And it's just going to be nothing but the Open Records, Open Meetings Act of Oklahoma. But for those that are actually at large, whenever we're talking about legal stuff here, first of all, I'm not a lawyer. I've never played one on TV. So I don't know really that much about the law, but whenever we're talking about legal stuff, for those that are watching, we're talking about the state of Oklahoma. So we're talking about pretty much our jurisdictions here. So everybody out there, please follow the law in your state. So there's 5 categories of board concerns: legal and financial duties. How many people here are actually members of your boards? Actually sit on your boards right now? That's good, about half, about half. Did you know that no matter what your board does, you are actually responsible for what that board does if you are sitting on that board? You are responsible legally and you are responsible financially for everything that that board does if you are sitting on that board. It is a very hard job to do if you are on a board. It's not just a title. It's not just a title. There is actually work involved, and it's very important. You actually have to look at the organization, look at the management of the organization. I know most of the boards in here are very small, but still you have to look at your organization and kind of manage the whole picture. Another concern, fundraising concerns. It seems like every time that we try to do something, even if we're not dealing with boards, every time that we try to do something, we usually don't have enough time or we don't have enough money. So we have to think about the big picture. Do we want to do this? Is this going to help our organization? Is this going to help our mission? How much does it cost? How can we get the funds? So that's another concern that you have to look at. You have to look at the fundraising concerns. And this is all stuff that we can actually provide training on. So just keep tuned to all the trainings that we got throughout the year. We got some pretty good ones lined up. Another one is communication and interaction with the community. This one, I believe, is the important one whenever you're talking about board governance. You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to communicate with your board. You have to be able to communicate with the members of your organization. And you also have to be able to communicate with the place where your organization is doing your business. You know, you have to communicate. And another thing is the board has to evaluate its efficiency and effectiveness. If something worked probably 5 years ago, some things sometimes change. Everything changes. The board has to be able to adapt. Sometimes you have to change your mission to actually help more people. You know, sometimes you always have to think about the big picture. Your organization may be founded to do one thing, but you may find that in your communities, your organization can still do that one thing, but still find other ways to help other people. See, we're all in this together, and we're all in this pretty much to try to better our communities. That's pretty much why we have these nonprofit boards. Going on to some of the board's responsibilities to the organization. So the members of the boards in here, what are some of the responsibilities that you think of whenever you're talking about when it relates to your board? What are some responsibilities that you hold if you are a board member? What are some responsibilities?
Be there at the meeting, be there.
Absolutely. You have to be there. I don't know how many times I've seen meetings where the board can't get business done because they don't have a quorum. Has that happened to some of you all before? Yeah. You have to be there. There has to be a commitment. Yes, that's awesome. First of all, let's just go. I think I have about 3 things here. One of the responsibilities for the board is to direct the board's mission. Why are we here? Why is this nonprofit organization here? Why were we founded? What are we wanting to do? That's one thing that the board has to do. The board has to always direct the mission of the organization. You're founded for something. Try to hone in on that. That's what the board has to do. And it has to protect the organization's resources. What are the organization's resources? What do you think the organization's resources means in this particular? Yes, ma'am.
Well, it can be your history, it can be your money, it can be your reputation.
Absolutely, yes.
It can be all the things that it takes to run an organization within the community.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And to see that the meetings are ran properly, that you have a quorum, that what you do in the community reflects what your organization does.
Absolutely, and it goes back to a trust issue. It goes back to that trust issue.
One of the things that they need to protect too is your volunteers, the people who actually are there.
Right, right.
You know, communicate, work together.
Mhm.
If there's conflicts, resolve them. You know,
That's right. That's right.
keep harmony going, because discord, your members then start falling away.
That's right. And it's very easy for an organization to get into discord.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's very easy for an organization to get into discord. So another thing is, whenever you're talking about protecting the organization's resources, talk about your finances, even the stuff that the COTA grant helps you all purchase, tables, chairs, those are resources. Some of you have community buildings out there. That's a resource. You got to protect those things. And then guide and support the organization's operations and personnel, which is look at your volunteers, look at everybody that helps keep your organization going. Characteristics of a good board. Once again, look at the big picture. Look at the big picture. Think about why we are here. Why did we start this? Why did we start this? Did we start this to help a certain group of individuals? Maybe we started it to help kids. Maybe we started it to help needy families. Think about why the organization was founded. And have a keen sense of priorities. Still direct your organization's mission. Prioritize. Recognize the value of growth opportunities. Now, even though your organization might have been founded for a particular purpose and your organization is doing great things to try to help those people in your communities, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't look elsewhere and find other ways to actually positively impact what you're doing. Look for other grant opportunities. Look for other ways that you can help, and you can still hone into what the organization's mission was. So just look elsewhere, but just keep an open mind, pretty much. Keep an open mind, because everybody needs help somewhere. Think before it acts. Whenever we do business, once again, keep an open mind. Sometimes let's use common sense, and let's think about what we're dealing with as far as the business is. Is this particular business going to help our organization? Does this financial purchase make sense? We got to think about stuff like that. Your organization has to think. Think before it acts. You have to value teamwork, because your organizations really won't be anywhere without a good team, without your volunteers. And you do have to protect your volunteers. Protect everybody that's trying to help your cause. And once again, constantly evaluate itself. Sometimes question, is there other ways that our organization can help people? Is our mission still the same as it was whenever we started maybe 5 years ago? Are we still on the same mission, or do we need to kind of think about other ways, possibly change the mission? Can we help other people? Because things change. time goes on and times changes. So your organization has to be, in other words, a living, breathing animal. Your organization has to be subject to change. But there's certain criteria, certain ways to do it. So we got the board. We know what the board needs to do. We're going to talk about the characteristics of good board members. Good board members. I'm going to open this back up to the people here. You all know your boards. You all have worked on your boards, some of you for years, some of you since we started, or you all started. What are some good characteristics of board members?
You're
Good.
involved and engaged.
Involved and engaged, yes. What else?
Honesty.
Honesty. That's right.
Efficient.
Efficiency, yes. Yes.
Promoting your organization.
Absolutely, yes. Let's do a few more. What makes a good board member in your all's eyes? Yes, ma'am.
A good, well, I don't know how to explain it, but like when somebody's not, if people are arguing or something, they know how to fix it, how to put different people in different spots of the club, like if we're having some kind of event, they'll
Mhm.
know how to put that person in this part of the event and that part of the event.
That's right.
To get it to all to go to work together.
That's right. And each of you all,
Well, me.
yeah. Peacemaker, that's a good one, Bill. I like that one. Peacemaker's a real good one.
Be willing to bring something to the board.
Yes, yes. Outstanding. Yes, be ready to bring something to the board. Be committed to your board. If you're on the board, that's a big commitment.
I mean, you know, all of us belong to an organization, whether it's what we're representing today or otherwise, that there's people that just sit there and they're bumps on the log, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
They're there because it's a position.
Anybody else have this problem?
We all
Anybody else know what she's talking about? Do I have to elaborate? I don't think so, but yes, that is correct. She is correct.
Yeah. Sometimes you get people that are so negative, though, that you wish they would sit there and just be.
And then, okay, then you get these people that want to be on every board,
Right.
and you know, their commitment is not to anything.
True.
So you have to always look at what the characteristics, what is the goal of the person that wants to be on the board, because we have people that want to sit on 17 boards now, you know,
Yes.
and I'm serious.
Yes, yes, definitely. I've seen it. Yeah. I may have just been working with Carter for maybe a little under a year, but definitely I have seen that. Yes, and I've actually been a part of that, and it's
know, and
very difficult.
To elaborate on what Ollie said, not only do they want to be on every board, but they want to control every
True.
board.
True.
You know, what I say goes. I don't care what the bylaws are. This is the way it's going to be.
That's right.
Because it's my idea.
So some of the characteristics that I wrote down here is able to listen, analyze carefully, think creatively, work well with others. That's a characteristic of a good board member. Willing to commit to serving the organization faithfully. Commitment. It's a big commitment to be on a nonprofit board. It's hard work. Committed to developing new skills and knowledge in order to serve your communities. You know, look for other ways that you can improve what your organization is doing. Look for other ways. Look for grants. When you're talking about funding, look for just different ways in general to help improve the impact of your organization. And you got to be dedicated to improving personal characteristics. Moving on to the board's legal responsibilities. Now, these are all relatively legal terms, but duty of care. Whenever you're talking about duty of care and you're talking about being a board member, duty of care just means care about your board. Come to meetings. Do work. If the board tasks you with something, do it. You know, do it. Help your organization. Just don't be in it for a title. Help your organization. Be loyal to your organization. And another way, whenever you're talking about loyalty, if you're part of an organization and you're out there in the community, if you're, say, just talking to people out in your community, don't badmouth your organization. Don't put your organization down. You know, back in the day, whenever I was younger, you used to listen to a lot of rap music. We always called that repping your set. Rep your set. Represent your organization and do it proud. Be proud that you're on that. Don't talk bad about your organization. Don't talk bad about some of the business dealings that they're doing. You may disagree, but while you're out there in the communities, people listen to you. And it's very difficult to get people to come in and help you.
And you're the face.
Exactly. Exactly. Be loyal. And be obedient. Committed. Commitment. Commitment. Some of the ways that you can avoid trouble whenever you're on an organization's board is try to protect the board against fraud, have clear financial banking policies, have policies set that, and don't deviate from them. Know who writes the checks, know how much money is in your organization. You know, just overall care about your organization. And theft goes back to not just financial records, but protect your resources, protect your buildings, protect everything that you got, that your organization has to try to help people. Protect it. Self-dealing. Think about it's good for an organization to have a conflict of interest policy, and this is something that we can go into detail a little bit later on. But it's good to have a conflict of interest policy. All organizations should have one. And we're looking at board officers and job descriptions. It's good to have job descriptions for all your board members. Just so, like, if you have new people coming in, they actually know what's going on. They know what they're getting into. You don't really have to have a job description, but it's just good to have something written down to let the people know what they're going to be in charge of, what this board member does, and so on.
No, Vince, one of the things they need to know, on our board, we have D&O insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Each board member pays that. Some people may want to join the organization, but they don't realize there's also financial responsibilities that you have to come up with.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that is something that you need to sort of make potential board members aware of.
Yes. Yes. Financial responsibilities, legal responsibilities, legal responsibilities.
Gone is the high school club days.
Yes. Gone is the high school club days. I miss those days. Anyway. So we got board officers and job descriptions. Legally, federally, and state, these are the four right here that you have to have in your board. That's the minimum amount of officers that you have to have. You have to have a president. You have to have a vice president or vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. You have to have these four in your bylaws, in your organization, for it to be legal. That's for the state of Oklahoma and federal, I believe. Board meetings. So we got the characteristics of a good board member. We got people that are there, committed. Let's talk about board meetings. How many people in here has ever been to a board meeting and it seems like nothing has ever gotten done? That's right. That's right. How many times has people been to a board meeting and there wasn't a quorum? Yeah. It happens. It happens. Everything is pretty much out of your control. You know, it does happen. It does happen. And you do have to have board meetings to actually be able to do business. You really do. You have to have it. There's a few suggestions whenever we're talking about board meetings. Board meetings are a forum for discussion. It's a place where everybody can come and talk about what the board is actually doing. It's a place where people can come voice their opinions about what the board is actually doing. If they don't like decisions, they can voice it. If they like decisions, let them voice it. It has to include everybody. It has to be inclusive. Everybody should be there. It should be organized, and you should follow an agenda. Now, it says it should be about 90 minutes long. This comes from the curriculum that CCO has. We have a curriculum that we've been using for a few years, and this comes straight from it, 90 minutes long. That's kind of it's kind of a fictitious number. It all depends on how much business your organization has. Sometimes there's more business to be discussed. Sometimes there's less. It just depends on what kind of business that your organization has.
I think what they're trying to say is don't just let it go on and on and on.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Don't let it go on. Be efficient. Don't waste your members' time, because time is something you will never get back. Time that is wasted in a board meeting is time that you could be actually out there helping your communities. Every meeting should be facilitated by a chairperson, president, or somebody that knows the basics of conducting a meeting. And one of the things that we're going to get into today is the very basics of parliamentary procedure, how to run a meeting, the policies of running a meeting and stuff. We're actually going to get into that here shortly. But every organization should have a chairperson, and they should conduct their meetings. And that chairperson should know a little bit about how to run meetings. Yeah. This is something that training is actually encouraged, but a lot of times when new people come into a board, they don't really know what's going on, and they try to learn how to run a meeting through osmosis, or actually just being there, watching things happen. You know, and a lot of times that's not really the right way to do it. You know, that could cause some problems down the road. So there's get a little bit of training, get a little bit familiar with parliamentary procedure, and just ways to actually efficiently run your meetings. Set ground rules. Ground rules should be agreed upon before the start of every meeting. What I like to say is, use the golden rule. Whenever we come to meetings, even if we disagree with somebody, just be respectful. Be respectful. There's going to be times whenever we come together and we're not going to agree with a lot of things that the board is doing. We may have questions. We may question things. There's going to be time when conflict arises. There will be times when that happens. If you are on a nonprofit board and there are at least 4 officers on that board, you will have conflict from time to time. It doesn't matter if everybody's best friends, if you know each other or not. If you have 4 different people on your board, you will have conflict. It will happen. It may not happen every board meeting, but it will happen. So just think about ground rules and just be respectful. Be respectful. Respect goes a long way. Follow a basic agenda. So this is a very basic agenda outline. And what's the reason why we have an agenda for our business meetings? What's the reason why we have an agenda?
So you can do business.
Exactly. So you can do business. What else? Is there any other reasons why we have an agenda for our business meetings? Efficiency.
So people will be able to know what the agenda is going to be and be able to discuss it and maybe research it before you get to the meeting.
Absolutely. That goes back to the duty of care, commitment. Be committed. Care about your organization. That's another reason why we have an agenda. Another reason we have agendas is because you have to. It's the law. Yes, Bill knows. It's the law. You have to have an agenda. It is the law.
Not only do you have to have it, but doesn't it have to be posted so many
I
hours
believe
before?
48. Yes. 48 hours. It has to be posted so everybody has an opportunity to view it. Yes.
Who makes the agenda and posts it?
Usually, in my experience, the president makes the agenda. As far as posting it, sometimes he may delegate that to the secretary, but usually the chairperson or the president will determine what new business the organization will discuss for that particular meeting or what business in general. Usually everything goes to the president and then they will add it to the agenda. First of all, let's just run through this. I have a basic agenda here. Let's call to order. Call to order. Opening ceremony or invocation. Don't really have to have that. But all the business meetings that I've been to do. Roll call. You have to have a roll call. Why do you have to have a roll call? Because you need a quorum. Why do you need a quorum? Why can't we just get a few people from the organization and do business? Why do you need a quorum? Why is a quorum important? Majority, yes. What else? It's the law. It's the law. You have to have a quorum. It's the law. I had an old gym teacher. Every time that we questioned him on why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do this? He would always just tell us, because it's the rules. And every time I go back and I start questioning myself or question things, it always goes back to him, because it's the rules. It's the rules. Why? It's the rules. And that was pretty much it. That's a good one. That's a good one. After roll call, it's good to it's the law. You have to actually read and approve your minutes. Now, whenever I say read and approve your minutes, I don't mean have the minutes there, and that's the first time that anybody has seen the minutes at the business meeting. The minutes from the last meeting can be distributed before the business meeting itself starts. And it's actually good practice to do that. That way everybody has the opportunity to read it before the business meeting starts. And they don't have to stop business and actually read. I've actually seen organizations stop their business meeting and there'll be nothing but silence for 20 minutes while they read their minutes. And then they go on and approve or amend. You know, save time. Save time. Get those minutes there. If you're a secretary or whoever gets the minutes to the organization, get the minutes distributed and save that time. It shouldn't take that long. It should not take that long. Also, the same thing goes with your treasurer's reports or any reports, committee reports that require action. Get those reports, get the minutes distributed before the meeting so you're not wasting time. So you're being efficient with your time. So the meeting doesn't take that long. So the meeting doesn't take 90 minutes. Moving down from the treasurer's reports, committee reports. You can either accept the reports. Now, when it comes to committee reports, if you have a standing committee and they bring a report to the table, if it doesn't require anything, if it doesn't require any votes or anything, the duty of the chair would be just to give the report or take the report and just move on. If it doesn't require any action, just have them give the report and just move on. Thank them for giving the report and move on. After your reports, look at unfinished business. I've never called this really, I never liked to call it old business. I always called it unfinished business. Because if it's old business, it kind of makes me think, you know, what's our organization doing? Are we not taking care of business? Unfinished business is what I like to call it. It's always unfinished business. And that is the time when the unfinished business comes. After that, if there's nothing there, move on. Just move on. New business. This, a lot of times, it could get hairy sometimes. Am I right? Whenever you're talking about new business in your business meetings, can it get hairy?
Yes.
Yes, it can. It can get hairy. And then after you're done with your new business, take in all the time that you need to talk about your business. Finally, usually have a place for announcements and a place to adjourn. In the packet that I handed out, you will see a sample agenda. And it's very basic. Your agendas don't have to be elaborate. It's the thicker one. It's the thicker one. And you can see that we touched pretty much on everything here. You have your call to order, your invocation. Your secretary would do the roll call to determine the quorum. Approve the minutes. Once again, make sure those minutes are distributed before the meeting so everybody has an opportunity to read it, so you don't have to stop business to read them. Go on to your treasurer's report. You have to approve your treasurer's report. Any financials, legally, you have to approve them. You have to approve it. Question it. Committee reports. Once again, if these committees don't require any action, take their report and move on to the next. Unfinished business, new business, announcements, adjournment. So this is pretty much.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
New business?
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding that if you don't have it on the agenda, you can talk about new business, but you can't actually do any business if you don't have it on the agenda.
That's true. Let me ask Tammy on this one, because we're all in this together. We're all in this together. We all know Tammy. This is the fearless leader of CCO right here. All right. Now, Tammy, he is correct. However, I always thought that agendas, if they need to be, can be amended if there is business that needs to be discussed. Yes.
So on new business, you're correct. It needs to be on the agenda. So if there is something that is very important, you need to get with the chairman or whoever's doing the agenda prior to time to have that added. If you don't have time and it's an emergency item, of course, that's handled a little different. But yes, in all cases, new business is just something that you discuss, and then you would basically just carry it on to the next meeting, unless it's an emergency then. And again, it is everyone's responsibility to get the items to the person that's doing the agenda ahead of time so that it would be added to the agenda. But if it's not on the agenda, you're correct. You cannot vote on it during that meeting unless it's an emergency.
Timmy, I've been in a council meeting where they have a clause at the end that says any other business that may not have been acknowledged or known before the agenda was set. Is that something that can be?
Well, I mean, you can add that, you just need to be very careful in adding that, because you do need time to think about things. So again, unless it's an emergency that has to be handled, you know, you need to add it to new business and think about it for the month and bring it back to the table the next time.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do, Tammy. Just before we adjourn, we ask if there's any other business, and if the community brings up other business, we just write it down and we put it on the agenda for the next month.
Correct. Yes, it gives you time to think about it, to, you know, check into it.
Yeah, they don't
and
want you
make
just springing
decisions.
something on somebody and trying to make a split decision.
Right.
At that moment, you're
Yes.
supposed to have time
Right.
to acknowledge what it is.
Yes. So again, it's to safeguard the board and it's to safeguard our organization. So you would not want to address anything unless it was an emergency.
Can't you call a special meeting if it's
Yes, if it's an
in
emergency,
between, so you don't have to wait a month?
Yep.
there's always the special meeting that you could call.
That's why I was going to mention what Rachel said about that little clause.
Yeah.
But then also, sometimes I think it's good to have that, option to say, I'm sorry, that's not on the agenda, we don't have time to discuss that, because sometimes things that something sneaking under the radar or
Right.
something, you know?
Right. Right. But yeah, it all goes back to your agenda. You know, you have to make sure that you have an agenda. You have to make sure that you have pretty much a roadmap to go by on your meetings. That's what your agenda is. It's your roadmap, so you don't get lost. And it's the duty of the chair to use this agenda to make sure that the meeting doesn't go off in different directions. Yeah. Plus, whenever you have an agenda, the chair can, you know, use this to make sure that it doesn't go off in different directions. And he also uses it to keep order. He uses it to keep order. It's a tool to keep order. That's pretty much what the agenda is. And once again, you have to have it. You have to have it. It is a legal document. You have to have it.
Vince, in these organizations where we all work together and know each other, Jack here is our chair.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't admire his position at all, because occasionally we all just take off like quails into the pasture, you know. We have, I've got this point I want to discuss, she's got this point she wants to discuss.
Yep.
And how his job of corralling us and bringing us back to, you know, point of order, you know.
Yes, yes. That is why the chair, whoever chairs your meetings, that is why the chair needs to have some sort of knowledge of how parliamentary procedure works, or how to actually run a meeting, because it's difficult. It's difficult. Yeah, things could get out of hand, off track really fast. And the agenda is one way that it doesn't. Yeah.
And, you know, if a person really wants to know how disturbing that is, I have served as interim secretary at some of the meetings, and you try sit there and take minutes when these conversations go 9 different directions.
Yes.
Because the point that should be discussed is being discussed over in this corner, and several other people are talking others, and, you know, you can get some interesting minutes recorded. I have written things down and thought, what were we doing? You know, what were we discussing? You know.
Yes. Yes. An agenda does make minute taking easier.
Yes.
Yes, it really does. But it's one thing to have your agenda, but you have to use the agenda. Yeah, you have to go by the agenda. So we're moving on. Parliamentary procedure. I think it's a good time to take maybe a 5-minute break, maybe a 10-minute break. I think some of you all may need to refill up on coffee. Feel free to grab all the food that you can that's in there. And then after this, we're going to talk about parliamentary procedure a little bit. So let's go ahead and take about a 10-minute break, and we'll move on. All right, now we got the blood going. Got the blood going. Okay, this next part is kind of one of my favorite parts. We're going to go over a little bit, very basic parliamentary procedure. So we're going ahead and go on and get started. Make sure everybody has the handouts. There was 2 handouts. One is a thick packet, one is a thinner packet. Make sure that everybody has that. Let's go ahead and the thick packet is actually kind of a script. It's a scripted mock business meeting. So I need some volunteers. I need somebody to be the vice president. You will read the vice president's part. Do I have a volunteer? Vice president, thank you. Do I have a secretary? I need a person to read the secretary's part. Secretary. Got one right there. Treasurer. Treasurer. Board member 1. Board member 1. Somebody back there. Oaks, I'm looking at y'all. Board member 1. We got 2 board members. I need 2 board members. 1 and 2. All right. We got them. So remember your parts. We're going to try to go by the script as much as possible. Once again, it's just a script. It's just to show you kind of how a meeting should run. And it's going to kind of get a little hairy, but let's take a deep breath and we will get through this. And hopefully by the end you will have a better grasp of how parliamentary procedure should work. So what is parliamentary procedure? Whenever you're talking about board meetings, whenever you come to your business meetings, parliamentary procedure is pretty much just the procedure and way a meeting should run. Okay? When people talk about parliamentary procedure, usually this is the go-to guide. And me and Dr. Gord were talking about the Robert's Rules of Order. That's the go-to guide. Now, I have to say this. I haven't read it all. I've read some, but this book is like 10 inches thick. It's written on what looks to be Bible pages. That's how thin it's written. And the words are written really small. But whenever it comes to talking about meetings and how meetings are supposed to run, usually everybody goes to this book. We're not saying that you have to use this particular book. We're just saying that you need some sort of parliamentary procedure in order to help your meetings run more efficiently. So whenever you talk about parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order comes from parliamentary procedure. And parliamentary procedure comes from across the pond. It comes from Parliament. Okay? Now, me being a long-haired backwoods Cherokee from Mays County, I wasn't born English. I'm not British. So the first time that I ever heard anything about Parliament, I heard about it and they came into my life at the same time. Whenever I first heard about Parliament, there was 2 things. It was usually about, I think it was maybe 7th or 8th grade. They came into my life and they changed them forever. When I'm talking about Parliament, 1 was the cigarettes, 2 was Parliament. Ladies and gentlemen, how many people know who Parliament is? Parliament Funkadelic. You gotta think about that. Parliament Funkadelic, the band from Detroit, the greatest funk band that ever came on the face of this planet. Parliament. Okay, never mind. Moving on. This is not the Parliament that we're going to talk about today. But if anybody wants to know about Parliament, this Parliament, let me know, and I'll talk to you all day about it. So, parliamentary procedure. About parliamentary procedure. There are advantages. there are numerous advantages to use some sort of parliamentary procedure whenever you're talking about running a business meeting. For one, parliamentary procedure is set up to provide a fair and orderly process for conducting decisions and making decisions. It gives everybody a chance to be heard. Anybody in your organization, it gives them all an equal opportunity to be heard, to voice their opinions, to voice whether they think that the business you guys are doing is up to par with the mission or not. It gives everybody the right to be heard for that particular item of business that you're discussing. Talking about the agenda. Whatever agenda item you're talking about, it gives everybody the right to be heard. Because everybody, whenever it comes to your organization, we're talking about inclusiveness, we're talking about transparency. Everybody has the right to know what is going on in your organization. Everybody has the right to know. And also, legally, everybody has the right to know. Because at any time, anybody could ask to see your minutes, ask to see your agenda, ask to see your financial records. They can. That goes back to the Open Meetings Act, Open Meetings, Open Records Act of Oklahoma. Anybody can. So it gives everyone the right to know what's going on. Everyone should talk and deal with one subject at a time. This is one thing that I have seen. I've been to a business meeting where they would have an agenda item and they would start talking about it. But then somebody else would bring up something else, maybe related to that particular business item, or maybe not. And then they start talking about that and getting off of the actual business item that they were talking about. Has that happened in your all's meetings? Yeah, it happens. It does. And that's where parliamentary procedure comes in. Parliamentary procedure helps you talk about one single business item at a time. It helps with efficiency. It helps the people that are taking the minutes. That's what parliamentary procedure does. That's one of the advantages. Talk about one thing at a time. Using this process, of course, keeps minutes easier to take down. And we'll get into the minute process in a little bit later, but just order. I've seen business meetings where people would come, they would bring up an order of business, and then they would open the floor for discussion, and then all of a sudden, some people would not agree on that particular item of business. They'd be very passionate about it. Sometimes I've seen tempers flare. I've seen people come face to face with each other. I've seen people actually punch each other. I've seen fights at business meetings, at church business meetings. I've seen it. It is the worst. But I've seen it. And if the chair has a good understanding of parliamentary procedure and how to run a meeting, I'm not saying that everything is going to be smooth. It will be smoother. Yes. So the role of the chair has a very, very important role whenever it comes to running your meeting. The chair is very important. Makes a big difference in how your meetings are run. It really does. General meeting duties. First of all, they have to decide whether or not there's a quorum. If there's a quorum, they can go ahead and move on and do business. If they see that there is not a quorum, you can't do business. You can't do it. It's illegal to do business without a quorum. You can't do business without a quorum. It's the chair's job to try to keep to the agenda. You have an agenda, you have a roadmap. It's the chair's job to keep it going, keep it running smooth. Keep things moving so that you're not bored, so that your meetings don't take hours and hours and you still have nothing done. You know, that's the chair's job, is to keep things moving. The chair also has some more duties here. When we're talking about the discussion and the debate, the chair has to remain partial during the debate. Even impartial, the chair has to be impartial. The chair cannot actively debate during a meeting, and they have to keep the meeting going, sometimes even if the meeting is discussing them. They cannot. I've seen it. I've seen business meetings where they're discussing the actual chair, whether the chair is doing a good job or not, and the chair has to stay out of it. They do.
Well, they conduct the meeting.
Yeah. They have to do that. I mean, it's difficult. I've seen it. I haven't been a part of it, but I've seen it. The chair can vote, but it can only vote to break a tie. That is the only time the chair can vote, to break a tie. If the board is voting on something and there's a tie, that's the only time the chair could vote. Excuse me, to break the tie. Also encourages shy members to kind of speak up and active talkers to listen. Sometimes the meetings that I've seen, we have what we call gunners. They're always there. They're always outspoken. They always have views. And then you have the people that are shy, that don't really talk, that don't really input anything during the meetings. It's not that they don't have anything to say, it's they're just shy. They may actually have some really good ideas. If a chair sees somebody that's not really talking, try to encourage them to give their opinion, to voice their opinion, to voice their concerns. Try that. And try to make your board run a little bit more smooth. Keep order. Got to keep order. Stick to that agenda. Keep order. As difficult as it may be sometimes, you have to keep order. That is the chair's main role, is to keep order. And that is the reason why we're talking about parliamentary procedure. Parliamentary procedure is just rules, policies to try to keep order. Keep order. Keep order and keeping the peace. The peacemaker, as Bill said it. Have to be a peacemaker. Yeah. And whenever you're talking, if you're the chair, it is very important to restate the motion before a vote. You may sound like you're just a broken record talking about the motion that's at hand. You may say it once, maybe some discussion. You may say it again and over, but it's important. One, the people have to know what they're voting on. They have to know what they're voting on, and the person taking the minutes has to know what to write down. It is important that you do that. Restate the motion throughout the meeting. You may do it 5, 6 times. It's not overkill. Trust me, it helps. You have to restate it. Board meeting process features. Right here, we're going to do some group participation. Okay. We're looking at the thick packet here. The one where it has the fictitious nonprofit agenda to the front of it. And we're just going to go ahead and kind of use the agenda here. And I am going to be the chairman. I will be the chair, and we're going to have a little fictitious meeting here. So I'm going to go ahead and call to order. It is 8 a.m. Actually, what time is it? It's 11:19, but we're just going to say that it's 8 a.m. because we started around that time. So 8, 10, I don't know. It's too early for me anyways, yeah. Okay, it's 8 a.m. I call this regular business meeting of the fictitious nonprofit LLC to order. Let us proceed with invocation, opening ceremony. And you all do it the way you do it. But here, our opening ceremony would be your favorite Cherokee word or your favorite Cherokee phrase. Whatever phrase that you love to say or love to hear, we're just going to say it all at one time. Okay? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Osiyo. Yes. Yes. So, moving on. We did the call to order and the invocation. Okay, we're just going to kind of briefly go through. Secretary, would you please call the roll? And we're just going to say that everybody is here and the quorum is present. And moving on, looking at the agenda, moving on to the approval of minutes from the last meeting. You all have received the minutes from the last meeting. You all have read the minutes of the last meeting already. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. So my board members, the ones that have a speaking part right now, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved. Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as read. Moving on. Approval of the treasurer's report. You have received the treasurer's report. You have had ample time to look at it. Right now, I would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report as submitted.
So moved.
Motion has been made. Do I have a second to approve the treasurer's report as submitted? Do I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded to approve the treasurer's report as submitted. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes. Right now, we're going to go to the committee reports. And I'm just going to kind of break roll here and just give a fictitious report. I'm going to step out of my role as chair and just act like I'm a person giving a report to the organization. So first of all, we have the grass committee. Yeah, the grass committee met last week and we discussed the brown grass outside of the CCO offices. We are very concerned about this because we love to look out and see the lush green grass of spring and summer. But right now, it's brown. It's dead.
It's winter.
It's winter. So we got together with the people that mow the grass, and we did a little bit of research, and we found that the reason the grass is brown is because it is winter. And that it should return back to its lush green state, possibly in March or April, all depending on the weather. That is my report. Thank you. Okay, so right now, the committee did not ask for anything. They did not request any action. So that person gave the report. And as the chair, I'm going to say thank you for the report and move on. Going to the Bradford Pear Committee. Behind the CCO offices, there's about 4 or 5 Bradford pear trees. And about 3 months ago, it was decided to go ahead and cut those trees down. We got with the people that helps run chainsaws and whatnot. And right now, we are on schedule to get those trees cut down. So those trees should be cut down within a few weeks. We are waiting on some possible pending permissions, but the committee doesn't see anything hindering us being on schedule. So right now, the trees are about half cut down and we are on schedule. That is my report. Thank you for the report, the Bradford Pear Tree Committee. Moving on, since there's no action required, you don't really have to approve your committee reports if there is no action, if they're not called for anything. They just give the reports and you can move on. Right now, is there any unfinished business? Seeing none, we now move on to new business. Whenever we're talking about new business, when we're talking about this little mock meeting here, these are some of the objectives that we're going to touch base on. And I said this is very, very basic, and I believe that it will help y'all's organizations a lot. First of all, we're going to touch on how to properly make a motion, which pretty much everybody, I believe, already knows how to do. How to second an motion, and actually how to amend a motion. There's two types of amendments. A motion can be amended twice, and we will get into that. A motion can be amended twice. And whenever you're talking about amendments, you're talking about you can change the wording on a motion twice, and there's a way to do that. You could limit the debate. Now, whenever you're talking about limiting the debate, you can do it in a number of ways. You can limit the number of people talking on a particular issue, a particular piece of business, or you can limit the time that people have to talk on a particular piece of business. There's different ways that you can limit the debate, and we'll actually get into that. Move to order the previous question, which is pretty much have the call to the chair and have them actually vote on the question at hand. Maybe stop the debate, but move on to actually voting on the motion, voting on the piece of business that you're discussing then, and the proper way to approve the motion. So we'll get into the different ways to do that. So right now, going back to the script, let's see, I now open the floor to the Vice President. The Vice President is going to bring up something, a request from Mr. Wahoo. All right, I now open the floor to the Vice President. You can go ahead and start right there, Vice President.
Mr. Wahoo came to me a few weeks ago and asked if he could roost in the trees outside of the CCO offices. I think we should allow him to. I make a motion to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside of the CCO offices.
I second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. I recognized the person, and you have to, in order to speak first, it goes back to the golden rule, you have to be recognized by the chair. And I recognized her. I opened the floor because it was already a matter of business that was on the agenda. So every time that you want to speak, make sure that you have permission from the chair. That's the one thing. Bill.
Well, if the chair don't give you permission.
That is a good question. That is a good question.
Is the law?
No, it's not the law. It's the chair should give everybody permission.
He has to give him due reason.
True. Due reason. For that particular business piece that you are talking about. So we have recognized by the chair. The motion has a second. This is debatable. You can actually talk about this motion. So moving on, it says a motion has been made and seconded to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside the CCO offices. Is there any discussion? So at that time, this is debatable. Anytime that you're making a motion, certain motions are not debatable, and we'll actually get into that. But most motions, whenever you're talking about business, are debatable. You can discuss it, and you really do need to discuss it if you have questions about it. If you're against it or for it, yeah, discuss it. You know, talk about it. It's important to communicate in our business meetings. A motion can be amended, and we'll get into that shortly. I said a motion can be amended twice. You can change the wording. You can amend the motion twice. And a motion has to have a simple majority to pass. There's some that require a 2/3 vote, but for the most part, everything requires a majority to pass. So that is where you can actually look at the other packet. This is kind of a cheat sheet. Boiled down Robert's Rules of Order, I guess. This is part of the CCO curriculum. It has, different things. It has motions, how to table motions, what you have to do. Can it be debatable? Can it be amended? Stuff like that. Now, of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, but whenever you're talking about the business that your organizations do out there, this is a good list to kind of go by. This is a good list to kind of go by. And whenever you're talking about Robert's Rules of Order, there's people that have doctorates in Robert's Rules of Order, and there's no need for that whenever we're talking about just business meetings that our nonprofits do. You know, so you can get like really into those Robert's Rules of Order, but for your viewing pleasure, we put this down and kind of boiled it down to the things that would probably help your organizations. So to make a motion, you gotta be recognized by the chair. And I make a motion to, I move to, and so on. Yes, sir.
Okay, as the person is fixing to speak, does he have to ask permission then to be recognized, or what?
They should.
They should. Yeah, they really should.
And if they don't?
If they don't, I believe it's really up to the chair. I mean, it goes back to just be respectful. Be respectful. Don't be yelling at each other. Just be respectful, and meetings can go smoother.
It can be just a raised hand.
Could be. Don't necessarily have to call, but you have to be recognized. You have to be recognized. That's the key. All right, subsidiary motions, incidental motions. This is where we're going to talk about amendments. And we're going to move on. So we got the motion. A motion has been made and seconded to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside the CCO offices. Is there any discussion?
I think we should make some money off of this. I move to amend the motion by adding the words for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund.
So we got this owl wanting to roost in our trees. Okay? We don't like freeloaders, so let's try to make some money off of this. So we got amendment. We have the main motion. We got the owl wanting to roost, and now we have an amendment. And pretty much what the amendment is doing in this is adding the words for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund. This is debatable. These amendments are debatable. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can talk about this. But whenever you're talking about this, whenever you're talking about an amendment, you actually have to keep your discussion to the amendment that was just made. We're not talking about the motion that was made before the amendment. We're just talking about the amendment. And you have to keep it that way. You have to. So moving on, amendments do require a 2/3 majority. Moving on. It is moved and seconded to amend the motion by adding at the end for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund. If amended, the motion would read to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside the CCO offices for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to amend the amendment by adding the words, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have an amendment, and we also have an amendment on that amendment. Yes, we do. Can we go further with another amendment? No. Can we go further with another amendment? No. We have to stop right there and kind of discuss the matter at hand. So it is moved and seconded to amend the amendment by adding the words, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., Monday through Friday. If amended, it would read for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. Is there any discussion on the amendment? And for time, we're just going to say there's none. All in favor of the amendment, and we're talking about the last amendment, and it was talking about the time that the bird could roost. Seeing none, all in favor to the amendment to read for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., Monday through Friday. Say aye. So let's all approve this. Aye. All opposed say nay. The motion passes. Now, anytime if there is any discussion before you vote on it, yes, you can discuss it, and it's, yes.
I have a question, because I've been to the city council meeting, and instead of doing an amendment on an amendment, they will often ask the person making the amendment if they would allow that change to be made in his original or her original amendment.
Yes, you can do that. You can do that. There's, yeah, you can definitely do that, and you can do it just like this. Okay. But either way, if there is something that is amended, it has to be in the minutes. You got to make sure that all the amendments, everything that requires action, is in the minutes. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, because he said that this one here, the amended amendment motion, has to have a 2/3 majority to pass. Now, would a voice vote necessarily, fill that requirement, because you really don't know offhand if it's 2/3 or not?
Right, that's a good question. I would definitely call for a roll call vote on that. Anytime that something, thanks for bringing that up. Anytime that something requires a 2/3 vote to pass, I would actually call for a roll call vote or hands raising or something, so it is in the minutes that how many people actually voted or voted against. Yes, ma'am.
You voted and approved the amended amendments.
Yes.
What happened to the original motion?
We're still, it's still in the air. We're still there. We haven't got to the original motion yet. And this is where it can get very complicated. And I've seen it happen. That's why the script that we have here is something that I tried to concoct using the rules here. So we just passed the amendment, the last amendment, and now the amendment, the first amendment, is getting ready to come up. So we are now ready to vote on the amendment to the main motion. Now this is the amendment to the main motion. Okay, since we changed the amendment, the first amendment is actually going to read different because we actually changed that amendment. We just passed that amendment. So now we're talking about the primary amendment. The primary amendment is the first amendment, and then of course, the secondary amendment is the second amendment. So right now, let's go back. We are now ready to vote on the amendment to the main motion to add the words for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund, but only during non-business hours, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., Monday through Friday. If the amendment passes, the main motion, the first motion, the item of business that we first discussed before we added the money and before we added the time will read, if this amendment passes, it will read to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside the CCO offices for $2,000 a month with proceeds going to the general fund, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. So for all purposes, let's go ahead and pass it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Since it is a 2/3 vote, make sure that you know who voted and so on. The amendment passes. So both amendments passed. And now, since we are talking about one item of business at a time, we are going back to the main motion. The main motion is what we're talking about. So right now we had the main motion, but we amended it twice. So now the main motion will read, to allow Mr. Rahu to roost in the trees outside the CCO offices for $2,000 a month, with proceeds going to the general fund, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. Is there any discussion? And right now, I'm going to go ahead and call the Vice President. Vice President?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's an important matter we are discussing, and input from the organization's members, not just board members, should be heard. I make a motion to open the floor to all members who wish to discuss this motion with a limit to 10 minutes for discussion.
Second.
A motion has been made and properly seconded to open the discussion to this motion. Okay, now this is very important. This is where limiting the debate will actually sometimes help your organizations and keep it on track of what's going on. So whenever you want to limit a debate, this is known as either an incidental or a subsidiary motion. It's applied to any motion or amendment. The actual motion here, because we're wanting to limit the debate, wanted to open it up. It's not really debatable. I mean, you don't really want to debate why you want to talk about it. You just want to talk about the motion. It does require a 2/3 vote to pass. And the example is I move that the debate be limited to, and so on.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The board has just approved it, and now,
The board approved the amendments. Yeah, the board has approved the amendments.
okay, not the motion.
Yeah, so we're talking about the actual motion right now. So the motion itself, a motion has been made and seconded that we open the floor to the members of the organization for discussion limited to 10 minutes on the motion, which reads, to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside the CCO offices for $2,000 a month, with proceeds going to the general fund, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. This motion is not debatable and requires a 2/3 vote to pass. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Chair opens the floor to all members who wish to speak on the motion to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside. Now, it sounds redundant. It really does. It really does sound redundant. But whenever you're talking about motions and amendments, it could get the situation can get kind of complicated. So you always have to tell people what they're talking about, always have to tell people what they're voting on. Yeah.
I thought you had to, if the motion was on the floor, you had to get that taken care of before you could take another motion. Is that not right?
That is true, but you could still discuss it, and that's the way to actually discuss the motion. Yeah, you can still discuss it. Yeah, discussion is very healthy. So this is one way to actually open the floor to discussion to keep order. But you are correct. You are correct on that. So right now, let's just go ahead and open the floor for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's been enough discussion. I move the previous question.
Okay, so say you want to limit the debate. We just voted on limiting the debate. So we're moving on. Everybody's discussed it. You know, of course, we're running out of time, but those things that I handed out, it's like very lively discussion. Oh yeah, I like owls. I hate owls. Owls are creepy. Stuff like that. So that's the times whenever you actually, they do freak me out. Owls freak me out. Anyways, that's the time whenever you discuss it. I'm not at work on Saturday and Sunday, so he can do whatever he wants to do on Saturday and Sunday. So right now, the board member move the previous question. So in effect, you're ending the debate. Whenever you move the previous question, you're ending the debate. Okay? And whenever you end the debate, in reality, you're kind of stepping on the rights of everybody that's at the meeting. You know, you're wanting to put limits on their rights, their limit to speak, their limit to talk. And that's where the 2/3 vote comes in. It has to be more than a simple majority. Everybody has to agree with it, more than a simple majority. So it has to have a 2/3 vote, because not one person can be in power. Not one person can dictate, you know, are we done talking? Can we, you know, we need to talk some more. You know, every time that you're talking about putting limits on something, you have to have a 2/3 vote. So a motion has been made and seconded to order the previous question. This is not debatable or amendable and requires a 2/3 vote to pass. All in favor to order the previous question, please say aye. And at this time, any voting member can call for a roll call vote. So anybody can call for it. So all in favor say aye. Yes.
I'll call for a roll call vote.
A roll call vote has been called for. Secretary, please proceed with the roll call vote.
Okay. Vice President,
Yes.
Treasurer,
Yes.
Board Member 1,
Yes.
Board Member 2.
Yes.
Ms. Secretary, how do you vote?
No.
The vote is 4-1 in favor. The previous question is ordered. The motion to be voted on now is to allow Mr. Wahoo to roost in the trees outside the CCO offices for $2,000 a month, with proceeds going to the general fund, but only during non-business hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. So, you know, we just voted on it. The ayes have it. Motion passes. And since there is no new business, are there any announcements? So you can just ask for announcements if there's any announcements. And seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I've got a question here,
Yeah,
point of order.
yeah. Oh, we're not in an actual meeting situation, but yeah, just, yeah.
I gotta throw that in there somewhere. Anyway, no, okay, the final motion here that we just voted on, is that also a 2/3 vote or a majority?
That is a majority.
Okay.
The main motion is a majority. You have your 2/3 votes for the amendments. That's why it takes so much time and so much, you know, agreement. You know, but the motion itself, simple majority.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right. We adjourn the meeting. Okay. So that's pretty much, yeah. That's pretty much very basic stuff. And we can actually provide a little bit more training about parliamentary procedure if your organizations would like. Yes, sir.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
In the history of parliamentary procedures, has there ever been a motion to adjourn shot down?
I haven't seen one.
I'm just wondering.
Because usually everybody wants to go home.
Those hours, were they the hours that the Mr. Hoot, the owl wanted? Or, like, if you go back and talk to him and say, these are the only hours that you can do that?
It could be, but
Can that be discussed the next meeting?
it could be. If they want to change them, it could be discussed the next meeting. Yeah, it could be.
How much of that money goes into general fund? Because somewhere there's gotta be a cleanup fee.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sitting
Yeah.
in front of the office.
Yeah.
How does this affect the tree committee?
Right. What you all are talking about is to reconsider, and that's actually talking about reconsidering a matter of business.
And
So
the reason I said that, because you do have those people that will bring things like
Yes,
that
they
up
will.
yeah,
all of a sudden.
Yeah, they definitely
You're
will.
like, what I do, you know?
Yes, sir. I got you.
Yeah, I'd like to be recognized, please.
Sure.
Now, what about appointing somebody as a parliamentarian or sergeant at arms? You ever do that?
I have seen it done. I've seen it done that actually works, and I've seen it done just actual title and they don't do anything. Yeah. So, but when it comes down to it, it's really up to the chair to actually know how the meeting is supposed to run and how to do it efficiently. Yes, sir.
The two-thirds vote requirement to amend and to end debate, that comes from Robert's rules.
It does.
Can an organization amend that in their own bylaws to say just require a simple majority?
They could, but I wouldn't recommend it. I really wouldn't recommend it, but they could. They definitely could.
And like sample I gave, for instance, somebody wants to amend the amendment. If they say to the person making the previous, would you add this, would you amend your amendment, then does it require 2/3, or because it's back to the original?
It's back to the original.
So they don't have to do
They don't
this.
have to do that. Yeah, but I really wouldn't recommend doing anything whenever you're talking about limiting things. You're putting limits on whether they want to talk about it. You're putting a limit on the actual business being discussed. You're putting limits on it. You're changing it, so it should take 2/3. I mean, you can, but I really wouldn't recommend changing the 2/3
And
requirement.
we're only talking about 2/3 of the board. We're not talking about, the others do
Voting,
not have
yes.
voting privileges
Voting,
at the board meeting.
voting board members, yes, yes. Any other questions? I know it's a lot to take in, and it can get really, really confusing. But hopefully you guys got a better grasp.
Good lesson.
And this is something, once again, that we can actually go more in depth. So moving on, we're almost out of time. First of all, move to the previous question. We did all that. Board meeting minutes. Minutes matter. They're legal documents. Legal documents, they're required by law. Your organization has to have minutes. Anybody can look at those minutes. Anybody can request those minutes. You have to have those minutes. And there is a sample based on the business meeting that we just had, the scripted business meeting. There is a sample minute in the packet. So it's just something to kind of go by. What you have to have, action motion, something voted on, stuff like that. Whenever you're taking minutes, make sure that they're read and approved at the board meeting. Make sure they're read before the board meeting, but you have to approve them at your board meeting. How to take minutes, use a template or a prepared form. You can use the form that I've included. There's different ways. There's nothing cookie cutter whenever it comes to the organizations. There's nothing cookie cutter that'll work for everybody. So just kind of look, but just make sure that you have all the information that you need. Quorum present, names, votes, motions, anything that requires action needs to be in those. Don't record everything. Don't record opinions. Record just the matter of business. Yeah. Do not record opinions. Don't say Joe got up and he was really, really mad. He was talking about this. He said Al's freaking out. Don't really need to know that. What we need to know with the minutes is the business at hand, the amendments and the motions. That's what everybody needs to know whenever they want to look at the minutes. Record your action items. Anytime action is needed, anytime something was voted on, record them. They need to be in your minutes. And avoid personal observations or interpretations. Yeah. Avoid those at all costs. We don't really need any of that in there. And if there's any documents submitted, say for instance, reports or something are submitted, there's an actual document, make sure that you attach those documents to the minutes. Yeah. Make sure, don't rewrite anything. If there's anything given to the board to vote on and it has to be read, anything, land, deeds, stuff like that, attach copies to the minutes.
So if somebody is giving a report, you have the financial report, the secretary does not have to say what currently you have or expenditures. They just attach.
They could, yes, and everybody should have the opportunity to read over it and actually know, it goes back to the duty of care. Actually care about your organization. Know what's going on. Know the inner workings of your organization. So that makes a good board member. So we're kind of expired the time. There are some announcements. I'm going to go ahead and let them Let's see. Say what they got. They got an organization here. The Rainbow House out of Locust has an announcement. Are there any other announcements after her? All right. Yeah.
If there's a correction on your minutes,
Yes.
do you redo the whole minutes
I would.
before the next meeting?
Yes. I would definitely do that. And if there is a correction on the minutes, whenever you are doing the minutes for the next meeting, that correction needs to be on those meeting minutes because that's an action. Okay, announcements.
Okay, I'll just read to you from our little bulletin. It's an introduction to the basics of sewing. We're going to have class on Tuesday and Thursdays, February 19th, 21st, 26th, and 28th, from 10:30 until 2 at the Rainbow House in Locust Grove. The deadline for sign up on this is February the 5th, and there is no cost to the participants. You will learn the basics and basically an introduction to sewing machines and how they operate. Rather than walking into a shop and saying, I need a sewing machine. It's like I'm walking into a dealership and saying, I need a car. They're going to see you and think, we'll sell her the biggest and the best. We don't care if she can operate it. So that's what we're going to learn. We'd love to see you all there. We'd love to have classes like this and expand those in the future. So if you know of anyone who would like to come, have them see me or call me. Oh, yes, and you bring your own lunch.
Any other announcements? Yeah.
We are on the south end of town, right there behind the big motel.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Friends of the Library at our library in March. On March 12th, if you know anybody in the Stillwell area that's interested in joining the farmers market, we're having a potluck on March 12th. And on March 14th, we're having a meeting, and our chief of police, Chad Smith, is going to come and talk to people about fraud and scams. And then on the 21st, Cherokee Nation is coming, and we're hosting a food handling class. It's free. Lisa West comes. It's at the library on the 21st. And the certificate is good for 2 years. So if you work, if your organization works with food, or you have some type of a fundraiser, this is a good thing to have.
What's the exact date on that?
The potluck, if you're interested in the farmer's market on the 12th, is at 6. Chad is coming at 5:30 on the 14th, and the 21st, Lisa will be there March 21st at 3:30.
Okay. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. If there are other announcements, please feel free to let me know, let Kinley know, let Brad know, and we could actually get those announcements out to our organization. So thank you all for coming. My name is Vince Feeling. Here's my card right here. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, thank you all for coming. Thank you.